In the last 2 years, Mike Posner has released his best album ever and potentially his worst album ever. The contrast is huge, so I want to talk about it. I like more of Mike Posner's sad music than his happy music. He is someone who has a lot of reasons to be sad and has a lot of reasons to be happy. He's also someone who puts his emotions into his music, so his emotions come through in his songs and his albums. So, for example, let's talk about two of his early songs from 2009, 2010. So, first off, I'm not a fan of the song Cooler Than Me. So, this song shows Mike Posner's bravado and swagger. The song's literally about how cool he thinks he is. I think that the song is both obnoxious and catchy. I don't understand how it got so popular, but for many of us, that song was our first introduction to Mike Posner, and at least for me, he and I got off on the wrong foot. In contrast, the song Please Don't Go is pretty sad, and it's also catchy. He definitely knows how to write a catchy song. I think that the synthesizers, they're very plucky, they're unique, they have a nice sound. Mike Posner is much more humble on this song. He's humble, begging, please don't go. The lyrics aren't especially poetic, but they don't have to be in combination with the melody and the instrumental that the song has. So, in my opinion, in his happy songs, Mike Posner is silly, goofy, and sure of himself in a way that I don't think is very appealing or flattering. In his sad songs, I relate to him more, and I think that those songs are better because I'm not busy cringing at him. I also, in general, I like pretty songs, and I think that Mike Posner writes more pretty sad songs than pretty happy songs. So after he dropped his 2010 album, Mike Posner was not able to release another album due to label issues until 2016. And he released the album At Night Alone that year, and there are two things that I want to talk about regarding this album. The first is that he had his most popular single ever from that album, as well as I want to talk about the album as a whole. So first off, Mike Posner's song I Took a Pill in Ibiza, specifically the C remix from this album, is his most popular and most streamed song. It easily eclipses the popularity of all his past work and probably anything he'll release in the future. I Took a Pill in Ibiza is a sad song, and it's not particularly memorable on its own, but the remix gives it the energy it needed to become a popular song and see top 40 play. It's also one of his best songs, and it's a sad one, and like I said before, that's not an accident. So for the album as a whole, you can tell that Mike Posner meant for it to be a whole cohesive work. In the first song, which is a little introduction, he says, this album is best listened to at night and alone. So he's saying that he has a specific way that he wants you to listen to it. So does it work as a cohesive piece of art? It's okay. So there are good songs on here, but there are also a lot of duds. There's the regular part of the album, and then Mike Posner also included remixes of the songs here, and that's where it includes the C remix. So usually I think of the regular songs in the album as the part that I judge, and then the bonus tracks are separate. But this is a kind of complicated situation because the best song on the album is the C remix of I Took a Pill in Ibiza. So if you just judge the album without the remixes, there aren't really any amazing songs. So that did not reflect super well on Mike Posner in terms of having the album be both amazing and cohesive. So Mike Posner also took a similar approach to his album release in early 2019, which is A Real Good Kid. This album is really, really good. I was considering titling this video A Love Letter to a Real Good Kid. So first off, Mike gives this album an introduction similar to the last one. He says, this album is 40 minutes long and is meant to be listened to in one sitting straight through. It is meant to be listened to without any texting, without emailing, without outside distraction of any sort. If at this time you are unable to devote 40 minutes of undivided attention, I politely ask that you turn this off and return at a later time. So he goes beyond saying, listen to this album at night and alone, like he did on the last album. He's saying this album is meant to be listened to as a whole, listen closely. And this is deserved. This album deserves this introduction, and it shows that he was thinking big picture about the whole album. So in a press statement, he said the album deals with love, loss, and eventual acceptance. When he was recording it, he had just gone through a breakup, his friend had just committed suicide, and his father had passed. And the songs, for the most part, are pretty and sad. January 11th, 2017, which is the first song on the album, it's very raw and emotional. Wide Open is hauntingly beautiful. Perfect, it's a multi-phase song where you can feel Posner's pain from his yelling, which would not work in any other song. It would be cheesy, but it works. There's the occasional happy song that's well done, like Move On. Even that song has some cheesy lines, but I give it a pass given the remainder of the album. There are also a few clips interspersed of Mike speaking with his late father, and that really tugs at my emotions. The album is dedicated to Mike's father. The final song on the album, How It's Supposed to Be, it's pretty good on its own, but it works perfectly as the climax and finale of the album as a whole. It starts with just Posner and a guitar and crescendos with a big rock ending. I love songs like that. And then to end the song and the album, he plays an audio clip of his dad from when Posner was a baby. And at this point, after the emotion of the song and the album and the dedication, hearing that clip makes me very emotional. I think that the album is amazing. I think that there are some amazing individual songs on the album, but the whole thing packs a punch when listened to the whole way through. When Mike Posner asked us to listen to it with no interruptions, that was deserved. He earned the right to say that by creating something so amazing and so beautiful. Unfortunately, in my opinion, he has not since earned the right to use that style of introduction, but he keeps doing it. At the end of 2019, he dropped a mixtape called Keep Going, and again, he asked us to listen to the mixtape from front to back with no interruptions. This album is almost an hour long, so it's a much bigger ask than it was on At Night Alone or on A Real Good Kid. And I like Mike Posner's pretty songs, and he doesn't really have any on here. I like hip hop because of like thumping beats and melodies, and I don't get any of that here. So in general, I'm not a fan of this album. But what is kind of cool is that he made this album right before he walked across the United States over the course of more than half a year from New Jersey to California. And here you could see me walking with him in Southern Illinois. We walked together for about half an hour. That was a very cool experience. Very recently, Mike Posner released an album similar to A Real Good Kid called Operation Wake Up. I was excited for his non-mixtape follow-up to A Real Good Kid, and this album is similar to that in that it has a lot of emotion and yelling, and he has a similar introduction. We're asked to listen to the album all the way through. We're also told to not listen if we have a mental illness, and he also says up front, get this, all the characters in the stories are completely fictional, and this is just gobsmacking. This is such a ridiculous album. The plot of the album is that Mike Posner finds his best friend with his recent ex-girlfriend and then kills himself, and it's about waking up, wake up. I can see why someone with mental illness should not listen to this, but honestly, I think that no one should listen to it because it is very, very low quality. None of it's real, none of it's pretty. He uses obnoxious voice filters to differentiate characters. The whole album is character-based. There are no melodies. There's not a single song on this album that you can enjoy by itself because it's all plot. It all has the obnoxious voice filters. The whole thing is a mess. So the upside of this is that it looks like Mike Posner has total creative control over his music, but the downside of this is that it looks like Mike Posner has total creative control over his music. I am flabbergasted by how bad the album is. I wanted another A Real Good Kid, but after this, I'm doubtful that Mike has another album like that in him. I expect from him a few good singles, but I'm not sure he has enough supervision or is getting the right sort of feedback to create something so beautiful and cohesive again. I want to see him try and release a more normal or by the book album to cleanse his musical palette, because at this point his audience will only be like diehard fans who are willing to put up with this. But honestly, like I would call myself a big fan of Mike Posner, but I would not recommend that anyone listen to Operation Wake Up. Mike Posner has released a couple of good singles in the last few months, and that's awesome, but there are a lot of artists with good songs. It's artists with good albums that are few and far between.